The Seattle sky was a familiar canvas of perpetual gray, a soft, diffused light filtering through the high windows of my home office. Rain, a constant companion in this city, was drumming a quiet rhythm against the glass, a sound that usually lulled me into a state of focused productivity. Today, however, it was just noise, a dull accompaniment to the increasingly discordant symphony in my head. My name is Ethan. I'm 35, an architect. I design spaces, homes, offices, dreams made manifest in steel and glass. But lately, the most important space in my life, the one I shared with Sarah, felt like it was crumbling, brick by painstaking brick. Sarah. My wife. 32, with a laugh that used to sound like wind chimes and hair the color of burnished copper that she often tied up with a pencil when she was deep in thought. She's an artist, an illustrator of children's books, and her studio, filled with the scent of paper and ink, was just across the hall from my office. We built this life together, in this craftsman house in Ballard, a neighborhood that still clung to its maritime past, even as it embraced trendy cafes and boutiques. It was supposed to be our sanctuary. The subtle shift started, as these things often do, imperceptibly. A missed goodnight kiss here, a vague answer there. At first, I dismissed them as the usual ebb and flow of a 7-year marriage. We had our routines, morning coffee brewed by me, shared silent glances over the newspaper, her soft, love you, as I left for the downtown office, my hurried, you too, as I juggled my keys and briefcase. Evenings were for cooking together, dissecting our days, sometimes just reading in comfortable silence, the only sounds the turning of pages and the gentle patter of rain. But the rhythm had changed. Like a jazz piece where one instrument subtly goes off-key, just enough to make you feel uneasy, but not enough to pinpoint the error. It began with the phone. Sarah had always been meticulous about her devices, but now her phone was a constant appendage. It would often lie face down on the kitchen counter, or she'd take it with her to the bathroom, something she never used to do. Once, I saw her quickly flip it over when I entered the living room. Just scrolling through some ideas for the new project, she'd said, a little too quickly, her eyes darting away. I told myself I was overthinking it. Artists are inspired at odd hours, in odd ways. Then there were the late nights. Sarah's work schedule, while flexible, usually aligned with mine. She'd often finish her illustrations around dinner time, after which we'd enjoy our evening. But recently, she'd been working late. Just trying to hit this deadline, honey, she'd explain, her voice a little strained as I'd walk into her studio at 9 or 10, finding her hunched over her digital tablet, the blue light illuminating her face. The deadline was real, I knew. But the intensity, the way she seemed to flinch when I offered to bring her tea, was new. One crisp Tuesday, a rare break in Seattle's persistent cloud cover, I decided to surprise her. I finished work early, picked up a bottle of her favorite Cabernet and some artisanal cheese from the market near my office. The idea was to enjoy a spontaneous evening picnic by Lake Union, watching the seaplanes land, a simple pleasure we hadn't indulged in for months. I let myself in with my key, the silence in the house immediate and profound. Sarah. Honey, I'm home early. I called out, my voice echoing a little. No response. I checked her studio. Empty. The digital tablet was off, her brushes neatly lined, a half-finished sketch of a whimsical tree fairy propped on an easel. Everything in order, yet an invisible knot tightened in my stomach. She usually left me a note if she was going out, even for a short walk. I pulled out my phone to call her, but hesitated. Maybe she just popped out for groceries, or a coffee. I went to the kitchen, putting the wine and cheese away. That's when I saw it. On the small corkboard near the fridge, usually adorned with our grocery lists and takeout menus, was a single, unfamiliar receipt. It was from a small, upscale cocktail bar downtown, the Obsidian Lounge. The date was from last Friday night. Time, 10:47 p.m. Total, $85. And a detail that made my breath catch in my throat, 2 drinks. 2 expensive cocktails. Last Friday night. She had told me she was working late, really pushing to get that fairy forest finished. I had been at a late meeting with a client, getting home just past midnight to find her asleep, her tablet still warm beside her. I remembered feeling a pang of guilt for disturbing her, for not being there. Now, the guilt was replaced by a cold, insidious suspicion. My mind raced. Maybe she met a friend. But Sarah rarely went out for drinks with friends without telling me. We shared our lives. Or, at least, I thought we did. I tried to rationalize it. A client meeting? Unlikely for an illustrator at a cocktail bar. A friend from college, passing through. She would have mentioned it. The absence of an explanation, the quiet stealth of it all, was what truly bothered me. When she finally came home an hour later, a faint blush on her cheeks and a trace of something sweet, like jasmine, in the air, my carefully constructed calm began to fray. "Hey, you're home early," she said, a little startled, but quickly recovering with a bright smile. "What a nice surprise." "Yeah," I managed, trying to sound casual. "Thought we could grab some dinner, maybe a picnic by the lake. I got your favorite Cabernet." "Oh, that sounds lovely," she said, but her eyes held a flicker of something unreadable. But I just grabbed a quick bite with Chloe. We were discussing some ideas for the gallery show next month. You know how she gets. Chloe was a fellow artist, a good friend. A perfectly plausible explanation. Too plausible. "Oh, okay," I said, forcing a smile. "Well, another time then. I'll just save the wine." I watched her, looking for any sign that the lie was a lie. Her eyes met mine briefly, then slid away as she started rummaging in the fridge. She seemed normal. Too normal. That night, as we lay in bed, the rain still falling, I found myself staring at the ceiling, listening to the soft, even rhythm of her breathing beside me. I wanted to ask her about the receipt, to simply lay it out and demand an explanation. But fear held me back. Fear of what I might uncover, fear of shattering the fragile peace that still lingered in our home. And a deeper, more primal fear, what if I was wrong? What if my imagination was simply running wild, poisoned by exhaustion and the relentless Seattle gloom? The next few weeks were a delicate dance of observation and denial. I started paying closer attention to everything. The way she dressed, a little more effort, new perfumes I didn't recognize. The way she responded to my touch, sometimes warm and familiar, sometimes distant, as if her mind was elsewhere. One Saturday morning, as I was getting ready for my weekly run, I noticed a small scratch on the passenger side door of her car, a slight, almost invisible gouge in the metallic blue paint. "Hey, what happened here?" I asked, pointing it out. She glanced at it, her brow furrowed slightly. "Oh, that must have happened in the parking lot at the grocery store the other day. Some careless driver, I guess. I didn't even notice." It was a plausible explanation. Our grocery store parking lot was notoriously tight. Yet, something in her tone, a slight detachment, pricked at me. I shook it off. This was paranoia, I told myself. She's just busy, stressed with her work. But the seeds of doubt, once planted, began to sprout. They intertwined with every seemingly innocuous event, twisting them into something sinister. A new, subtle scent on her clothes that wasn't her usual lavender or vanilla. A late-night text that made her smile to herself before she quickly tucked her phone away. Little things, accumulating like dust bunnies under the bed, unseen but always there. The biggest shift, the most painful one, was the gradual erosion of intimacy. Our shared laughter became less frequent, replaced by polite smiles. Our conversations, once deep and sprawling, became practical, logistical. Sex, which used to be passionate and frequent, dwindled to perfunctory acts, often initiated by me, met with a certain passive acceptance from her. Her body was there, but her mind felt miles away. I'd try to pull her closer, to find the spark that used to ignite between us, but it felt like chasing smoke. I started taking longer routes home from work, driving aimlessly through the city, past the bustling Pike Place market, the gleaming glass towers, and the familiar, rain-slicked streets. I'd watch couples walking hand in hand, laughing, and a bitter envy would twist in my gut. What did they have that we were losing? Or had already lost? One evening, after another strained dinner conversation about house chores and upcoming bills, I couldn't take it anymore. We were in the living room, a crackling fire doing little to warm the chill in the air between us. She was sketching in her notebook, humming a tuneless melody, completely absorbed. "Sarah," I began, my voice sounding rougher than I intended. She looked up, startled, her pencil pausing mid-stroke. "Yes, Ethan. Is everything okay?" The question hung in the air, heavy and loaded. She blinked, then offered a small, hesitant smile. "Of course, honey. Why wouldn't it be?" "I don't know," I admitted, running a hand through my hair. "It just feels like we're drifting apart. Like you're not fully here with me anymore." Her expression hardened almost imperceptibly. "Ethan, that's unfair. I'm busy with work, you're busy with yours. It's just a phase. Every couple goes through this. We're fine." She tried to sound reassuring, but her eyes, usually so expressive, were guarded, almost defensive. "Is there something you're not telling me?" The words slipped out before I could stop them, raw and desperate. She put her pencil down, her jaw tightening. "No, Ethan. There's nothing. Why would you even ask that? Are you accusing me of something?" Her voice rose slightly, a note of anger creeping in. "No, I'm not accusing you," I quickly backtracked, regretting my impulsiveness. I miss us. I miss the way things used to be." She sighed, running a hand through her hair. "Look, I get it. Things have been a bit hectic. But let's not make a mountain out of a molehill, okay? We're a team." She came over, sat next to me on the couch, and leaned her head on my shoulder. It was a familiar gesture, one that used to comfort me immediately. But now, it felt hollow, a performance. I could feel the distance, even as her body pressed against mine. I hugged her back, trying to believe her, trying to push away the creeping dread. But the questions lingered, buzzing like trapped flies in my mind. The receipt. The late nights. The subtle changes. The feeling that a part of her was simply inaccessible to me now. The next morning, as I left for work, the rain was coming down harder, a torrential downpour that blurred the lines of the city skyline. My phone vibrated in my pocket. It was a message from Sarah: "Have a good day, love you." A perfectly normal, affectionate message. Yet, as I drove away, the simple words felt like another brick in the wall she was building between us, a wall I was increasingly desperate to tear down, even if it meant destroying everything on the other side. The suspicion had become a living thing, a shadow that followed me everywhere, whispering doubts into my ear. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me to the bone, that I couldn't live with this uncertainty anymore. I had to find out the truth, no matter how painful it might be. The quiet desperation that had been a dull ache in my chest had now sharpened into a point of no return. Sarah's dismissive "we're fine" had done the opposite of what she intended. It had solidified my resolve. I was no longer a husband blindly hoping for things to get better, I was an investigator, a man on a mission to uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. My home, once a sanctuary, was now a crime scene, and I was looking for the clues I had been too blind to see. The investigation started small, with the most obvious suspect, her phone. I knew her passcode, a simple combination based on our anniversary date, a detail that now felt like a cruel relic of a happier time. The next morning, as she took a longer than usual shower, I slipped into our bedroom, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. I picked up her phone from the nightstand. The cold, smooth surface felt alien in my hand. My thumb hovered over the screen, hesitant. This was an invasion, a violation of trust. But what was trust worth if it was already broken? I unlocked it, the screen lighting up to a photo of us on a trip to the Oregon coast, a forced smile on my face in retrospect. I quickly went to her messaging apps. Nothing. No shady conversations, no mysterious contact names. She was meticulous, I knew. She probably deleted everything. My heart sank, a mix of disappointment and a strange, guilty relief. But then I saw a small detail in her browser history. A recently visited website for a local art supply store. Nothing unusual there, but the search query right before it caught my eye: cocktail bars Capitol Hill. Capitol Hill was a trendy, vibrant neighborhood, a good distance from both our house and the downtown lounge from the receipt. Why would she be looking up bars there? She had told me she was having drinks with Chloe, but Chloe lived in Queen Anne. Another tiny piece of the puzzle that didn't fit. My second line of inquiry was her car. The small scratch I had noticed a week ago nagged at me. It wasn't just a simple scrape. It was a gouge, deep and long. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the seed of doubt had taken root. That evening, after she was asleep, I went out to the garage, flashlight in hand. I knelt beside the car, tracing the scratch with my finger. The paint was a bright, almost shocking red, foreign to the sleek blue of her car. It wasn't a scrape from a parking lot pole. It was a paint transfer from another vehicle. A red one. My mind raced back to my own car, a black sedan. No red scratches. I went through the parking lot incidents in my mind: a scrape with a red car at the grocery store. No, she would have mentioned it. She was too careful with her car. This felt deliberate. A fleeting image of a hurried, panicked parking lot encounter flashed in my mind. Or something else. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. The blueprints on my desk blurred into a meaningless tangle of lines. My boss, Mr. Henderson, a jovial man in his 60s, noticed my distraction. "Everything all right, Ethan?" he asked, leaning against my cubicle wall. "You look like you've seen a ghost." "Just a lot on my mind," I said, trying to force a smile. He nodded sympathetically. "Tell me about it." "My wife and I just celebrated our 40th. Takes a lot of work. Communication is the key, son. And a little bit of privacy, I suppose. A man needs his hobbies, a woman needs hers. Keeps the mystery alive, you know." His words, meant to be comforting, landed like small, sharp stones. Keeps the mystery alive. The phrase echoed in my head, a bitter irony. That evening, a Friday, she told me she was meeting Chloe for dinner to finalize plans for the gallery show. A plausible excuse. I watched her get ready, her face carefully made up, her hair styled differently. She wore a dress I hadn't seen before, a silk floral print that seemed to shimmer in the low light of our bedroom. She looked stunning. It was a look not for Chloe, not for a casual dinner. It was a look for a date. My heart was in my throat as she kissed me goodbye, a quick, almost perfunctory peck on the cheek. "Don't wait up, honey. We'll probably be out late." "Okay," I managed, my voice a hollow whisper. "Have fun." As soon as the front door clicked shut, I went to my office and pulled up the Maps app on my computer. I typed in Chloe's address. It was in Queen Anne, a 20-minute drive away. Then I typed in a few popular restaurants and bars in Capitol Hill, the neighborhood she'd been searching. There was a direct conflict. The knot in my stomach tightened, a cold certainty setting in. I sat there for 10 minutes, watching the clock tick. The rain had started again, a gentle drizzle that masked the sounds of the neighborhood. The temptation was overwhelming, a siren call. I knew what I had to do. I had to follow her. I pulled on a dark jacket, grabbed my keys, and walked out the door. My car, a black, anonymous sedan, felt like a tool in a spy movie. I drove slowly, my hands tight on the steering wheel, my eyes scanning the road ahead. I knew where she was going, the Capitol Hill neighborhood was a logical guess. I didn't know the exact location, but I had a plan: would find her car. She drove a distinctive blue crossover, and in the bustling, densely packed streets of Seattle, it would stand out. I drove around the Capitol Hill district for what felt like an eternity, my gaze fixed on parked cars, my mind a churning mix of fear and adrenaline. My breath was a shallow, painful thing in my chest. What if I was wrong? What if she was just meeting Chloe somewhere and I was making a fool of myself? And then I saw it. The glint of blue under the streetlights, parked a few blocks away from a popular cocktail bar. The Nightingale, its neon sign a bright, garish slash against the gray night. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic, desperate bird. I pulled over, parked my car on a side street, and got out, my hands trembling. I walked the rest of the way, my feet silent on the rain-slicked pavement. I pushed open the heavy wooden door of the bar, the sound of laughter and music washing over me. The air was thick with the scent of whiskey and expensive perfume. I scanned the crowded room, my eyes searching, a sickening dread building in my stomach. And then I saw her. At a corner booth, bathed in the soft, intimate glow of a small table lamp. She was laughing, her head thrown back, a genuine, joyful laugh that I hadn't heard in months. She wasn't alone. Across from her sat a man. He had dark hair, a confident smile, and he was leaning in, his hand casually resting on the table, just inches from hers. My world, the one I had so painstakingly built, came crashing down around me. It wasn't the laughter that broke me, or the touch. It was the look in her eyes as she looked at him, the easy intimacy, the unguarded adoration, a look she used to reserve just for me. The pain was a physical thing, a sharp, cold spear driven into my gut. My vision swam. I turned and stumbled back out into the rain, the cold drops mixing with the hot, bitter tears that finally, mercifully, began to fall. The mystery was solved. And the truth was 1,000 times worse than any doubt. The story now begins to move towards its climax. The stage is set for a powerful emotional confrontation. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still glistening under the cold, halogen glow of the streetlights. My reflection in the car window was a stranger's face, hollow-eyed, pale, and etched with a kind of pain I didn't know I was capable of feeling. The drive home was a blur. My mind was a deafening silence, all thought replaced by the single, searing image of Sarah's joyful, unguarded face as she laughed with him. I parked the car in the garage, the familiar scent of oil and concrete now tainted with a phantom bitterness. I walked into the house, and the silence was different. It wasn't the peaceful quiet of an empty home. It was the oppressive silence of a tomb. The lights were off, save for the soft glow of a lamp in the living room. She was sitting on the couch, sketching in her notebook, just as she had been the night I tried to talk to her. She looked up, startled, as I entered. "Ethan," she said, a little too brightly, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "You're home early. I thought you were working late tonight." I just stood there, my jacket still on, the cold city air clinging to me. I didn't say anything. I just looked at her, truly looked at her. I saw her flawless makeup, the new silk dress, the way her hair was styled just so. It wasn't just a lie, it was a performance. My hands, still numb from the cold, balled into fists in my pockets. "Is something wrong?" she asked, her voice losing its forced cheerfulness, a hint of unease creeping in. "You look. I look like I just found out my wife has been cheating on me," I said, my voice a low, raw whisper. The words hung in the air, heavy and poisonous. Her face went pale, the color draining from it as if it had been a canvas. Her mouth opened and closed soundlessly. The pencil slipped from her fingers, clattering onto the hardwood floor with a sharp, final sound. "Ethan, I don't know what you're talking about," she stammered, her gaze darting away from mine. The denial, the instant, reflexive lie, was almost as painful as the discovery itself. "Don't lie to me, Sarah," I said, the venom in my voice surprising even me. "I saw you. At the Nightingale. With him. The name of the bar tasted like ash on my tongue. The new dress. The late nights. The phone calls you delete. The goddamn receipt from the Obsidian Lounge. Each word was a nail in the coffin of our marriage. She finally looked at me, and her eyes, once a familiar and comforting brown, were now filled with a desperate panic. "It's not what you think," she said, her voice cracking. "It's complicated." Complicated? I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound that echoed in the silent room. "What's complicated about it? You've been lying to me for weeks. 4 months. You've been living a double life. What's complicated about that, Sarah? Tell me. Tell me his name. Is he a fellow artist? Does he appreciate your work more than I do? Is he the reason you haven't looked at me in months, the reason you feel so distant in our own bed?" The questions poured out of me, a torrent of pent-up pain and anger. Tears were now streaming down her face, but I felt no sympathy. They felt cheap, like part of the performance. "You don't understand," she sobbed, her hands covering her face. "No, I don't," I shouted, my voice finally breaking. "Help me understand. Help me understand why you threw away everything we built. The house. The plans. The life we were supposed to have. Tell me why you felt the need to lie to me instead of just talking to me." She lowered her hands, her face a mess of tears and mascara. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. "I swear I was. It got out of hand. I didn't mean for this to happen." I shook my head, my heart a leaden weight in my chest. "You didn't mean for it to happen?" I repeated, my voice now dangerously low. "The lies? The deceit? The betrayal? That was all just a mistake." I took a step closer to her, and she flinched, a small, involuntary movement that was the final, devastating confirmation of everything. The man she was with was the truth. I was the mistake. The silence that followed Sarah's confession was heavier than any words could ever be. It felt like the air itself had been sucked out of the room. Her sobs were the only sound, and for the first time, they felt genuine, a raw expression of her own pain and defeat. But it wasn't a pain I could share or even comfort. It was a separate island of suffering that I could only watch from a distance. I turned away from her, my gaze falling on her sketchbook lying on the floor. I picked it up, my fingers brushing against the still warm pages. I flipped through the drawings, whimsical forests, laughing fairies, the intricate details of a fantastical world. This was her refuge, her work. The place she disappeared to, the one I had naively believed was just across the hall from my office. And now I knew it was more than just a place. It was a symbol of a life I was now outside of. The sketch of the whimsical tree fairy felt especially ironic, a lie in paper and ink. I walked into the kitchen, the space where we used to cook together, where we used to stand shoulder to shoulder, our hands accidentally brushing as we reached for the same utensil. Now, it felt cold and clinical. I grabbed a glass from the cupboard and filled it with water, my hand trembling slightly. Sarah followed me, her voice a small, broken thing. "Ethan, please, just let me explain." "There's nothing to explain," I said, not looking at her. I took a sip of water, the cold liquid doing nothing to quench the fire in my gut. "The words you use don't change the facts. You made a choice. And you kept making that choice. Every time you deleted a text, every time you looked at your phone, every time you lied about a deadline. You chose to build this life on a foundation of lies." "I was unhappy," she whispered, the words like a physical blow. I turned to her then, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "And so you decided to destroy my happiness to find yours? Is that it? You were unhappy in this home, with me, with the life we built. Did you ever stop to think how I felt? How I would feel?" She shook her head, her tears flowing freely now. "It's not that simple. It's been hard for me, too. I felt invisible. Like I was just a part of the house, a part of the routine. I needed to feel like I was alive again. Her words were like daggers, cutting through my shock and grief to a deeper, more profound anger. Invisible? I said, my voice rising. I bought you every art supply you ever wanted. I spent hours helping you with your canvases. I was there every night, asking you about your day, about your art. What more did you want from me? A spark, she said, looking me in the eye for the first time, her voice gaining a surprising strength. I needed a spark. I felt like we were just roommates. Just going through the motions. And when I met Mark, he saw me. He saw my work. He made me feel like I was worth something again. The name, Mark, was a physical punch. It was the name of the man at the bar. The man who had given her a spark. The man for whom I had become a roommate, a part of the routine. The revelation that she had found happiness with him, while my own world was falling apart, was almost unbearable. So you just moved on? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Without ever telling me you were unhappy. Without ever giving me a chance to fix things. I tried, she cried. Remember when you asked me what was wrong? I wanted to tell you, but I couldn't. I was a coward. I know I was. And I'm sorry. I am so sorry. Her apology, while seemingly genuine, was too little, too late. It was an acknowledgement of her crime, but it did nothing to erase the damage. Sorry isn't enough, I said, the words feeling foreign and cold in my mouth. I placed the sketchbook on the counter between us. It felt like an impossible chasm. I don't know what to do now. I walked out of the kitchen, out of the room, and out of her sight. I went to the guest room, a room we had set up for visiting family but which now felt like a perfect symbol of my new, separate existence. The next few days were a blur of hushed conversations and cold, empty silences. We moved around each other like strangers, two ships passing in the night. She stayed on her side of the bed, and I on mine. We didn't touch, we barely looked at each other. The house, our home, was now just a space we inhabited, filled with unspoken words and the heavy ghost of what we once were. My mind raced. Revenge? It felt like a petty, childish impulse, a fleeting thought of smashing something, of causing her the same pain she had caused me. But I knew that wouldn't fix anything. It wouldn't bring back the woman I loved, the woman who had once loved me. The only thing it would do is make me a bitter, broken man. Separation was the only option. The only path forward. The idea was a wrenching, gut-wrenching one, a profound and absolute end to a chapter of my life I had always assumed would go on forever. The last morning we shared, the gray Seattle light filtered through the windows as usual. I sat at the kitchen table, a divorce lawyer's card from a friend's referral clutched in my hand. I stared at the phone, my thumb hovering over the numbers, the finality of it all a crushing weight. She came in, her eyes red-rimmed and tired. She saw the card. Our eyes met, and in that one fleeting moment, I saw it all, the regret, the pain, the absolute exhaustion of our shared lie. We need to talk, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I know, I replied, the words feeling like a physical burden. I think we're done. The words were like a small, sharp knife, but they felt true. The story now reaches a crossroads. We can either delve into the emotional and practical details of their separation, or we can focus on Ethan's journey to rebuild his life after the devastating heartbreak.